Okay, everything's going. So we need the best with what's left. All right.
which they will celebrate on June 1st by Glenn and Tisa Fields. So congratulations to Glenn and Tisa. We are going to be having trivia night again, and it's going to be on Saturday night, July 20th. So it is time to begin sharpening your brains, getting ready for that night. If you would like to sponsor any of our campers, we have 17 campers going to Maryland this summer, which is excellent. We've been sending a good number of kids every year. It went down a little bit last year, but this year we're back up again, so we're really excited about that. But if you're able and willing to sponsor one of our campers and help some of the families out, you're invited to talk to Ken. Our repair affair is going to be on June 8th. Men of Faith activity, there's going to be a meeting after church next Sunday. And then a cookout being sponsored by them on July 3rd. Summer musicians are needed. Please speak to Mark if you are interested. And the organ donation announcement is still in the bulletin. Some people are still contributing to that. And fundraising for the kids' trips is you can buy a gift certificate for Krispy Kreme. And next Sunday is when our kids are going to be on television for Crusade for Children. And the golf scramble is going to be on June 21st, starting at 1 p.m. So information on that is found in the bulletin. And Catherine Ullenbacher can give you more information on that as well. And if you're interested in learning more about St. Mark's, more about the church, I invite you to have coffee with me in my office during the Sunday school hour next week, for the next 2 Sundays at 9:15. You learn about the United Church of Christ and about St. Mark's, and there is no obligation to join the church after doing it. Let us continue with our worship with our music for seven. Don't beg, my mother told me. Don't whine, I tell my children. Be polite, the key to a civil society. The foreigner approached the rabbi. Her need was great, her daughter ill, her desperation complete. She begged, she whined, she was impolite. Emboldened by need, shouting, heard, healing. Uppity faith and feisty women, annoyance rewarded, challenged, inspiring. There's a mistake in the bulletin, so we're going to be rising and singing our opening hymn, number 73. There's a wideness in God's version. With open arms, you welcome all who call on your name, who acknowledge you as Lord, and look to you in faith. No one stands outside the circle of your mercy and love, and so we come to
can tell me what this weekend is? It is Sunday, but what is weekend? Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow is Memorial Day. That's a holiday, right? We get together with family and friends and we cook out and the pools open up, right? For our pickup of the summer. But Memorial Day, though, is a lot more than just cookouts and spending time with friends and family. You may tell me what Memorial Day is about? Well, we do celebrate Jesus every day. But what else do we do? Remember those in the military that passed away? Most certainly. And for those of us that are veterans who have served, it's a very special day. Because we may have people that we knew personally. So today I want to bring to you, and I have one of some things that I'm really great about. They mean a lot to me. Okay? So let me show you. First, you may know what this is? I have a cover, as we say in the military. It was a Dixie cup. Huh? Look at that. So this is very special to me too. You want to look? And then, see, Sammy had another item that's very special. These are my ribbons that I earned. Each one of them is a different award that myself or a unit received. So this means a lot to me too. And then, the ribbons, yes, they stay on the right, everybody. And then I had pictures. We all like pictures, right? So let me show you this picture. This was my first ship that was ever on. Pretty cool. And then Sammy, you got my signature, you want to show everybody? And there's my other one. And then I have, there's another picture. Okay, so that picture. So Sammy, who's in that picture? I'm in there, right? I'm right there. But there's another person in that picture with me, and his name was Seaman O'Malley. And he was the very first person that I became friends with when I got stationed on the second ship. And in this picture, we were in Japan. And he showed me how to use the trains, and he told me how to ask where the restroom was, and all those important Japanese things that I need to know. But what's so special about all these things that I brought is that picture of him and I mean more to me than any of the other items in the line. A year after that picture was taken, an accident happened on the ship and his life was taken. So he is very special to me. And that photo is very special because it's the only one I have of him. So on Memorial Day, we remember those that gave their lives so that we can have our freedoms. So tomorrow when you wake up and you head to prayers, say a little prayer for those families that have lost loved ones in the service. Can you do that? All right. God, we thank you for these children. We thank you for those who gave your own sacrifice. Amen. Now you go back quietly while ascending.
Good morning. This morning's scripture comes from Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28, the Syrophoenician woman. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. This morning's reflection will be given by the Reverend Dr. Johnny Manzo, continuing the theme, Amazing Women of the Bible.
Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, because you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. As I've been progressing through this sermon series on amazing women in the Bible, I'm focusing today on the third woman I wanted to speak about. The first two were pretty obvious. We've all heard of Mary Magdalene, and we all know of Mary, Jesus' mother. But today we're reflecting on a woman known as the Syrophoenician woman. You may be wondering, who is this? She'd be a woman of Canaanite descent, a native of the Phoenician seacoast, Greek in religion, probably also spoke Greek. In short, she was not Jewish, and she believed in pagan gods. Greek religion, she believed in Zeus and Apollo and such. But she comes to Jesus because her daughter is being tormented by a demon. And this creates a very unsettling encounter between Jesus and this Canaanite woman. Jesus is less than eager to help this woman, explaining that his mission is first to the house of Israel. And she is not one of them. There is an uncomfortable reality is that this woman demonstrates that she has a better grasp on Jesus' identity than his hand-personally selected apostles do at this point. They are doing everything they can to get Jesus to ignore her and keep her away from Jesus. They keep reminding him, she is not one of them. She is not one of them. And Jesus' response to her, dare I say, is not one of great eloquence. She is not one of them, and he is not here to serve her or her people. He is here to save and serve only his own tribe, his own people. And she is not one of them. But Jesus is the one who has left the Jewish territory. He has come into this woman's world, and she is asking the Messiah for help. And something remarkable takes place. Jesus, as presented in the Gospels, is always surrounded by people who don't have a clue. The apostles are either doing one of two things, wondering what he is doing or sleeping. And I'm often surprised that the apostles have not been depicted in art with dents on their forehead. Because it seems to me that every time Jesus says something and they ask a question, it then sort of gives an answer and they go. He is constantly calling them out for the foolishness. And then the scribes and the Pharisees would come up to him with word games and bizarre scenarios, trying to force Jesus into saying something foolish. And in the end, the opposite always happens. The woman, this happens all the time. Jesus takes their twisted words and untwists them and gives them back. But in this instance, something is different going on, and the opposite happens. The woman actually stands up to Jesus and confronts him and gets him to change his mind. And in this moment, this pagan woman helps change the entire focus of Jesus' ministry. At this point on, Jesus begins to expand his ministry a little bit to beyond the people of Judaism. And we begin to see a foretaste of that Christianity would morph into becoming from a movement within Judaism into a new religion, a new expression. And this woman is a foundation of it, and she does it in a remarkable way. The apostles are trying to keep her away. And Jesus begins to engage her using cultural norms. She is a woman, And women in that era had no right to ask anything of men. She's a pagan, nowhere close to where Jesus is religiously. She is not Jewish, she is some other ethnicity. She is culturally, to Jesus and the apostles, little more than a dog. And Jesus reminds her of that. She is not worthy of his time. But the woman does not walk away. She has grit, she has persistence, and she comes back at him. She says, you know, even dogs get crumbs. And in that moment, everything changes. One response and everything changes. And Jesus responds to her, giving her not the crumbs, but the best. He heals her daughter and praises her for his faith. And this woman, in almost a humorous way, draws Jesus away from cultural norms. Now, cultural norms can be good. Sometimes cultural norms get in the way of progress. And sometimes cultural norms get in the way of God. Now, there's something I always keep saying about biblical interpretation. Many of you who've been here for a while have heard me say it. The first rule of biblical interpretation is context. The second rule of biblical interpretation is context. Do you remember what the third rule of biblical interpretation is? Context. Very good. The narrative is a dazzling example of the context of Jesus' world. You don't associate with people outside your own tribe. There are and were in humanity barriers that are there between people. And this woman in this one time and place says, we do not need barriers. And Jesus drops the barriers, teaching us all a lesson. We put the barriers there, God doesn't. And the second thing that happens is that a person we least expect is a person who can change the narrative on us. This woman was all wrong for them to be associated with. She was a pagan. Jesus and any Jewish man, because they didn't tell Bible stories to the women, but Jesus and any Jewish man could go back to the book of Exodus and the Ten Commandments and the golden calf when when Moses is on Mount Sinai. Be it worshiping Zeus or the golden calf, all pagans were to be avoided at all costs. And she was a pagan. She was also the wrong ethnicity. Judaism was not only a religion, but a people. And these were people all descended from the 12 tribes of Israel and could trace back their lineage for centuries and centuries and generations. This woman wasn't in that lineage anywhere. She was also a woman. Women did not ask things of men. They were not equal to men, and under Jewish law, they were not even allowed to have religious conversations with men. They were left out. She was all wrong for Jesus even to be interacting with. And she becomes only the second person in the Gospels to challenge Jesus. The other instance comes when Jesus and the apostles are at a wedding feast at Cana, and his mother is there. And she said, you know, they run out of wine. And he said, well, it's not my problem. And then she ignores him and says, do whatever he tells you. She ignores him. That was his mother. This woman is not his mother. She is not a relative. There is no reason for him to be paying attention to her. She's a Syro-Phoenician woman who, for all intended purposes, is not even a person who would be in 5 feet of Jesus. But she challenges him and changes him. And he expands his ministry. And this one very out-of-place woman changes things. You know what's amazing about this very significant woman in the Bible? We don't even know her name. They didn't even bother getting her name. But she changes the course of Jesus' ministry. Sometimes there are quiet women who make remarkable changes. You ever hear of Mary Logan? 1868. Her husband was a man named General John Logan, and he and his family were invited to go to an event in Richmond, Virginia in 1868. He could not attend the event, so his wife Mary went to the event. Mary Logan expected the time in Richmond to be bad. The city of Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy, and it had been pretty much rendered into dust by the Union Army. As her carriage was bringing her into the site of the event, Mary Logan saw something that began to choke her up and began to move her. There was grave after grave after grave of soldiers, Confederate soldiers, and almost all of the graves had flowers on them. The families were still mourning for them. She returned home, and she said to her husband that the entire nation needed to begin decorating the graves of those who had died in war at least one time a year. And based on her suggestion, and it took her a while to convince her husband, but based on her suggestion, day was created, Decoration Day, later on being known as Memorial Day. And now in 2019, Memorial Day has become sort of a catch-all patriotic holiday. Sometimes we need to remember that this is a day that has a particular meaning for a particular group of people. It is for those who never had the opportunity to live a life after not serving in uniform. This is about those who died before their service was over. This is a day when we do not honor the glory of war. We count the cost of war. We memorialize and remember those who were lost. And it's all the result of a woman named Mary Logan. Without Mary Logan, this day would not exist. Today's narrative teaches us some profound lessons. We may never hear the name of the Syrophoenician woman, and we know very little about her other than this encounter. The Savior of the world entered into her world, and in one moment she changed his mind. And in that changing of his mind, she changed the world in the process. Amen. We have a good number of people to pray for. First, Carol and Jen are a couple who've been fostering a newborn baby, and their baby is on a liver transplant list and became desperately ill and was life flighted to Cincinnati and is doing better, but they've asked for our prayers. We continue to pray for Carson Wallace and Darlene Devine and Brennan Johnson and Sherry Bond Davis and Bruce Whitson and Gail Blank and Kenneth Parsley. Bill DeVries was in the hospital for a few days this week, and he is now home, but we pray for Bill's continued recovery. And we also pray for Susan Wells, who's going to be having brain surgery again this week, and is obviously quite concerned about that. Are there other people you'd like us to remember in prayer? Yes?
I have 7-year-old great-granddaughter that broke her shoulder. It was right below the shoulder.
Okay. 7-year-old granddaughter broke her shoulder. Sounds painful. Addison. Okay. Yes?
I have a niece who was in a really bad accident a couple of weekends ago.
Julie Shannon was in a bad accident.
She broke her arm, her pelvis, her ribs.
Oh.
It's a semi.
Okay. So we'll continue to pray for her. Yes?
Yeah, keep my nephew in your prayers. He just had an 8-inch mass removed, and we will find the pathology out on that, so it's coming weeks.
Okay, your nephew who had an 8-inch mass removed. Yes? we have some joys. First, this is the supplier's last Sunday for the year until the fall. So I think the choir has done a spectacular job, and Mark's leadership has been Susie Hammond asked me to announce her last weekend, her son-in-law. I don't know if you remember hearing in the news that a police officer in Louisville was run over by perpetrators as they were escaping. And the police officer who was run over was her son-in-law. And so her son-in-law had a really badly broken leg and was in the hospital. The good news is he's home and he is doing well. He has a long rehab ahead of him, but we continue to pray, and we're rejoicing that he is home and doing well. And Mark and Mary Taylor, this would be Mark Taylor, this is Katie Barksdale's brother, and Missy Taylor's son. Mark and Mary welcomed the baby boy this weekend, so we congratulate all of you. That's always an exciting time. Yes? Carly Poe, your granddaughter, graduated from high school. And there's all sorts of cool graduation going on. And for some, I know school has ended, and some school ends this coming week. And so that's a joy for the kids, but pray and sympathy for the parents. Let us pray. In the quiet sanctuaries of our own hearts, we all call on the one whose power is over us, whose power is great yet gentle, firm yet forgiving, holy and healing. You created us, you sustain us, you call us to live in peace. We ask you, O God, hear our prayer this day. Hear our prayer for all those who have died, whose hearts and hopes are known only to you alone. Hear our prayer for those who put the welfare of others ahead of their own, and give us hearts as generous as theirs. Hear our prayer for those who gave their lives in the service of others, and accept the gift of their sacrifice. Help us to shape and make a world where we lay down the arms of war and turn our swords into plowshares for the harvest of justice and peace. Comfort those who grieve the loss of loved ones, and leave healing and hope for all of our hearts. Hear our prayer this day, and in your mercy answer in the name of all that is holy. And, O God, may your peace be upon us each and every day of our lives. Amen. Let us pray the prayer Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Recognizing the generosity and sacrifice of people, the courage of people to speak up when they see something is wrong, let us respond to God with generosity for one another.
those who love and follow you. As Jesus demonstrated to his disciples, you offer the immeasurable peace of an eternal home. Like the Syrophoenician woman, may we have a faith that persists, to challenge each other to new ways of thinking, to extend your mercy and love to all those around us. We praise your name and place these tithes and offerings before you. Multiply these gifts so that those seeking to establish peace in this world will feel your guiding hand. We pray in the name of the Prince of Peace. Amen.
I invite that we turn and face each other and commission each other. Let us go forth into the world